I am Audra Erwin, the High on Life coach, and I am super stoked to be the third side of this coin festival that we are kicking off today. And I love that we're kicking it off with the topic on authenticity, because truly, truly, when you are completely authentically who you are, you have no place to be other than high on life. So that is me. How about you, kick-ass Christopher Rausch?
Well, I am Kick-Ass Christopher Rausch. I'm the creator of the Kick-Ass Guide to Life, Kick-Ass Motivation for Kick-Ass People. I help people overcome their self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. And I'm not sure if we're allowed to say that, but I just said it anyway. I'm really super excited to be here with these guys and just talking about what it takes to have an authentic, awesome life and being able to share different opinions and views that you guys can actually walk away with and be able to improve your life and enrich your life as a part of hearing what we're saying here on Three Sides of the Coin. So happy to be here and hope we can help you out.
Great, thanks. You know what? When I thought about doing something like this, these are the two people that first came to mind, and I'm so glad that they decided to join me on this collaboration. I'm Carol Pilkington, and I'm a spiritual mentor, and I work predominantly with women, but I love working with men too, who really are into finding out who they are and their true nature. And I work with people that are in transition or are trying to discover more than just what they do in the world. They're looking for a deeper meaning, purpose, and understanding about what they're here to do. So without further ado, let's kick it off and start sharing our perspectives on what authenticity is, and see if we can go deeper and deeper and deeper into the subject matter, because what I love to do is really discuss something so that we get a deeper meaning and deeper understanding of something. That's been my practice and my work over the past 13 years. So as we go around, let's see where we can go with this.
Mm-hmm. Let's go on the merry-go-round.
Yeah.
So who wants to go first?
I nominate you.
You nominate me. Well, so talking about authenticity, which is the new buzzword, I was doing some research on it not too long ago, and it's pretty interesting how if you're looking to be authentic, that you're not necessarily authentic, which I thought was kind of interesting. So people putting themselves out there saying, hi, I'm Mr. Authentic, I'm authentic, is actually a way of not being authentic, and that actually just being yourself is truly the way the authenticity comes through. And I've found in my research, obviously being who I am, used to be a suit and tie speaker, that when you're just authentically yourself, you don't necessarily care what people think. I mean, that's a hard thing to say because I think we all care about what people think. That's just the way that our egos work. You can care to a lesser extent. But I think when you're truly authentic, that you just have a vibe, you have an aura, you have an energy, you have an enthusiasm about yourself that people gravitate to and want to be a part of. And it may not be for everybody, but for me, being authentic is just, you take the good, you take the bad, you look at other people and you don't judge based on what they like and they don't like. You look at them, and I just recently came up with a definition of kick-ass and authenticity, and it's about that people are more purpose-driven versus ego-driven. And I don't know what you guys think about that, but I found that authentic people are about the purpose, and the unauthentic people are all about the ego and the money and the materialistic things.
Ego is fronting. So anytime you're fronting, you're not being truly authentic, in my opinion. So I totally agree with that. When you come from a place of service and really, like, as long as the place of service comes from not wanting to gain recognition, or I'm doing it so that this, right? I would say that would be more, authentic. So, Carol?
Authenticity means to me, at a very deep level, that we truly take responsibility and ownership for everything that we are in the world, and be honest with ourselves And when we can be honest with ourselves, then we can be honest with other people. But until we really know what that really is, until we know what that looks like, we're just kind of bouncing from pillar to post, thinking that we're being authentic, like you said, Chris, and really just projecting our beliefs and feelings and emotions and whatever else out there. Mm-hmm. And when we can really get in touch with our own true nature and begin to that process of being aware, what I call being aware of being aware. So it's being aware that you know in that very moment what's going on, what you're doing, how you're coming across, what your motivation is behind whatever it is that you're doing. Oh. That's taking ownership and responsibility and being authentic to yourself and to other people. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I tell people that everything begins and ends with what comes out of here and here. And a lot of times we're trying to do things for other people, or we're trying to do things because that was my question to you guys is, before I say anything more, where do you think it comes from when we stop being authentic? Because when you think about kids and you watch kids playing on the playground and you think about they come out of the womb without any judgment, without any prejudices, and they say kids say the darndest things and they're honest and they're. What do you guys think happens when we lose our authenticity or we become something that we're not? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Where does it stem from? Is that what you're saying? Where do you think that stems from?
Yeah, where do we stop being authentic and start being fake?
Probably kids. They say 7 years. They say everything before the age of 7 years, you're already programmed. Basically, that's when you're that period of time that. Whatever, no's you get or whatever, that you have built that basically into your programming, and that's kind of what you operate like out of moving forward. But I think no, like don't do that. Stop, just opinions, are like, for example, being prejudiced, right? I don't think you're just born prejudiced. I think that's, maybe if you were grown up in an environment and a parent maybe had that opinion and you just were like, oh, that's how, I think you can take those things on. And I don't think that's necessarily authentic. I think that when sometimes you haven't even had the opportunity to check in with your true beliefs so that you can be authentic. You're buying the labels, or you're believing, whatever beliefs were handed down and passed down to you. But I think it starts very young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. We come into the world so raw and so clean that we absorb everything that's in our environment, from our parents to society, school, and we absorb language, and we absorb everybody else's thoughts and belief systems, and we are not able to decipher after a certain period of time what's ours, and so we have to go later on through this process of uncovering what is real to us, what is ours, and what's somebody else's. And when we begin to go through that process, that's when the real authenticity process also begins, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, Carol. It's interesting because I've done so much work on, like what you were saying, Audra, about the conditioning process that happens to us from the time we're born until the time we're about 5, 6, 7 years old. It's amazing because we take on, like Miguel Ruiz said in the 4 Agreements, we start taking on these beliefs about ourselves based on the conditioning and the programming that comes inside of us from society, that we start making those beliefs and we say, oh, okay, I must be this because, I want to be like my parents. And from the start, we want to be loved by our parents. And I think from what I've seen in the research I've done, the minute you stop getting that love and that acceptance from your parents, then you start thinking, okay, what do I have to do to get it? And you don't know if you necessarily fundamentally agree with it, but it's like, oh, mommy and daddy don't like black people, so I don't like black people too, because I'm not going to tell mommy and daddy you're racist. And then you just come up with that conditioning belief. and you spend the rest of your life saying, okay, wow, if I get people to like me, then I feel good. So what is it that you like, and what is it that you like, and all these different things. And like you said, Carol, we get to a point where we're in our mid-40s or our 30s or whatever, and we're going, wait a minute, who am I, and what am I about, and why am I trying to make all these other people happy when I love all people, and I don't, I am weird, and I say stupid stuff, and and breaking apart that thing. It's just interesting how you watch kids, and you watch the ones that are are authentic, and you watch the ones that try to blend in and fit in. And I was one of those kids.
Well, and it's that conditioning too. Whether it be society, like you have to look a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you have to have a certain caliber of income, you have, all of those things. And when you fall short of that, and you don't fit that mold or that box, you naturally think there's something wrong with you, that you're flawed, and then that's when you go down that avenue of really not authentically owning who you really are, and seeing that you uniquely are a gift to the world in whatever form of expression that looks like, not what society tells you it should look like too. So it's a lot of undoing as we get older. Like you said, it's that waking up. I think we all have that surrender moment where you wake up one day because you're freaking tired of keeping up with the Joneses. Like, it's exhausting, right? And that you still feel unhappy no matter how, you can never keep up. You can't. And you just get to that point where you exhaust yourself to surrender. I mean, that's what happened for me. And it's just like, okay, like, what do I even believe? Like, did that even make sense to me, or did I just adopt that belief? And who do I ultimately want to be, and what does my life look like, and what do I think, and allowing myself to truly express that without reservation, without going, oh, I have to water myself down so that so-and-so is comfortable in my presence, and it's just, so we have to go off of that. We have to go off of that.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
You said a lot there, and I think the nature of comparing, what you were talking about, keeping up with the Joneses, is so prevalent in our society, because everything, we're being measured and scored from the moment we begin school, if not before then. Everything's based on our grades and whether we get ahead or not, and so that begins to take its toll inside. And when we take that out into society, we're also being measured on whether we're the right person for the job, and on and on and on. And until we can really understand what that means just in and of itself, not as a valuation on who we are inside, it's just a measure of what they're looking for to play their game. It takes a lot, it takes a huge leap to understand that there's nothing personal going on, that all these measurements that people are taking are based on the rule set that they've created for that particular game, and it's got nothing to do with who we are. And when we begin to create that bit of separation, that space where we can begin to look at that and see ourselves as not being judged or evaluated, it's just the name of the game that others are playing, and we can choose to play it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Games people play, you take it or you leave it. Do you remember that song?
Asia. Was that Asia?
Me, I have to. One of those, I believe you're right. Something.
Yeah. Walking jukebox.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, there's going to be some of that in play here. So, true authenticity, my friends, is breaking out into that's my own life right there.
There you go. So, have you guys personally experienced situations where you weren't authentic in your life, and what did that feel like, and what did you guys have to do to overcome it? Because I know personally, I've spent a lot of years going from I couldn't get balanced. It was like I was either 100% me, or I was 100% okay. Here's what I got to be for everybody, and then just going up and down. And now I think at the age of 45, I've pretty much figured it out. But I'm just curious about you guys.
Sure. Do you want to go first, Carol, or?
Sure.
Okay.
No, I've never experienced that. Liar, liar. Yeah, for sure. I've even known when I've not been authentic. You know, I've caught myself in that place where, oh, this is not real. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I need to clean it up immediately so that I can I can return to that authentic place. But before I was aware of those kinds of things, yes, like I was saying before, we bounce from pillar to post and we just are projecting ourselves out there in every which way we feel is needed in the moment. But say, for instance, a job. I've had jobs in the past and I've gotten fired. Now, I could say that it was because of them, but when deep down I looked, I knew it was probably coming. I wasn't giving my my all to the job, and I even wanted to be fired. But a lot of times people will say and get angry and upset that they were fired, but when when they really look deep down inside, they know where they weren't taking responsibility.
Yep.
And so in those kinds of situations, I definitely know and remember that I wasn't being authentic and real. This is like really when I was in my 20s, my early 20s and stuff like that. I had jobs that I didn't like, and I did everything I could to get fired. So in those situations, yeah, and when I've lied to somebody else and wasn't truthful, yeah, I wasn't being authentic. And I think that when we're lying, deep down we know it, but it's whether or not we have the ability in that given moment to own it and clean it up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And another form of that would be like for me, I know, like if say we were in a big group and you had to stand up and introduce yourself and say who you were and what you did, like I remember like just being there and like sweating and going, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? As they're all going around the room and introducing, I would be saying, what am I going to say, and how, you know, make sure I sound okay and that I sound articulate and that they understand what I'm saying and I don't come across like an idiot. Well, that's not authentic. That's not authentic. You know, for me to be able to stand in my power and the grace and the radiance of who I truly am and speak from my heart, and this is who I am, and show up like I show up now, you know, I wasn't able to do that. You know, just, you know, anytime that you're in your head of, oh my gosh, and you're coming from that place, you're seeking, you know, how am I going to be perceived? How am I going to come across? And that's your ego, and that's not your authentic self-expression. So I know that's a huge thing, a challenge that I overcame, because I was that, missed out on what everybody was really connecting with other people, because I was so consumed with how am I going to be perceived? How am I going to be received? You know, so.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When we're in our heads, we're not being who we are. We're not being present, and that leaves out that authenticity factor. It goes away completely. Yeah.
I authentically have to move my computer because I have to plug it in. So here's me traveling. All right.
She has a dead battery on a Google Hangout. Nice job, Audra.
Listen, guys, I drove 3 hours to get here in time for this, so I get a little forgiveness card.
You get a little forgiveness card. You get a hug, sweetie. Yeah, for me, it's definitely been a journey. I grew up with my mom, who was a very vocal person about what she liked and what she didn't like, and she had no problem telling you what she felt. She liked it, she hated it, she disagreed with it, whatever it was. She didn't have any filter, and I started growing up being that same way. But I would watch and I would see how successful or unsuccessful she was doing that. And while in one part I respect her and admired her because she didn't care. I mean, she would walk. I mean, it was just, a lot of it was rude, and I realized, okay, there's a certain balance between being authentic to yourself and being truthful in what you believe and what you want to say, but also you have to have a filter and understand that because you have a certain opinion about a certain segment of society or something doesn't mean you just have to vocalize it and say, well, that's what I think, and that's, that in a bag of chips. So I went from being, because I was so lonely as a kid, my big thing was I wanted to be liked by everybody. And that started to shift a little bit when I got into music, because it was like I found this segment of society that embraced me for having long hair and liking rock and roll music and Kiss and all that other stuff. And I found that group, but then all of a sudden I started finding other groups that I wanted to be a part of that didn't like me for that. So then sometimes I would hide that part of me because I wanted to be liked by this group. And then it was like I got a job, and then I learned at the job, okay, you're not allowed just to walk up and tell the boss you think he's an idiot. And that's a debatable thing about authenticity, as far as being who you are and being in that moment and saying what you want to say. So for me, it was all about trying to be things for my ego and trying to prove to people and trying to be all things to everybody. And that's the way I've always been. I've always been a person that takes care of people. That's why I like to speak and coach. And it wasn't until I started realizing that I was self-medicating, and this is what I found in people I've coached. I can find out whether or not they're truly being authentic with themselves and loving themselves if they've got, self-medication issues, because they're hiding the fact that they're not comfortable being themselves and where they're at. And for me, I noticed I was doing that, and I stopped and I said, okay, why am I doing this? And the number one reason was I wasn't happy. And I said, okay, why am I not happy? Well, I'm not being true to myself. And so, like with the suit and tie speaking, I'm standing there in a room full of all these suit and ties, and we're all seeing the same stuff. We're in the blue suit and the shiny shoes. And I thought, I'm not a suit guy. I'm up here being a fake because I'm trying to get people to like me and buy my products. And I'm like, I'm not a suit and tie guy. I'm a rock and roll Harley Davidson biker, cuss swearing, lovable guy. And when I started embracing that, the happiness inside of my body just exploded. And to walk into a room wearing a bandana and jeans and wallet chains and all, that takes moxie, that takes confidence. And that's what I tell people, when you really want to live an authentic life, it's about building that up. It's not going to happen overnight, but you just have to walk into a room knowing, okay, half of this room thinks I'm crazy, which is okay. And that's one of the things I love about you, Audra. You just go for it. You just say what's on your mind, and I love that. And it's going to be for some people, and some people it's not. And hopefully, I always tell those people, don't focus on me and what you don't like. Go find somebody that you do like. Don't waste your time on me, because I get it, I'm not for you. But go find somebody you do like. And so when I started doing that, I realized so much about myself and how simple life really is when we're happy at our core.
And thank God that you do, because like you would be depriving the gift that you give us in your true you. You just, like, you are awesome. And like, you just think about that, like, we deprive the world of our true awesomeness by just owning who we are and rocking that. And so, yay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't, you just, anyway.
Easy for you to say.
Hey, I know. And I think we all, to some degree, have struggled with some aspect of this, of what we've talked about. Somebody can relate in some way, with any or all of this. And so, yeah.
You were talking about that filter before, Chris, and I really wanted to speak to that, because with your mom and with me, I used to just say whatever came out of my mind, was from my mind out my mouth. Not often, but I thought I was doing people a service by telling them what I thought, and I thought I was being honest and real. But I was just spewing my own beliefs and opinions. And as I've gone through my own journey, I've realized that sometimes not saying something is being more authentic. Sometimes there's a saying that the more you know, the less you say. And so that I don't push my own agenda on others, I really look to see what my motivation is for saying anything anymore. and if there is a receiving or a listening for it first before I blurt something out. I think that's so important, and I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Thanks. Yeah, it really is. And I learned when you said something, it triggered it. Somebody taught me that because sometimes we want to say stuff, to show how much we know and to show off, not to necessarily show off, but, to contribute and participate and show our value, again, to be liked. And somebody said something to me once, and it stuck with me for the most part. Unless you have something to say to the conversation that's going to add value for that other person, then chances are you probably want to keep that pretty close here, unless you say, hey, I've got some ideas about that. Would you like my opinion on that? And if the person says, yeah, sure, okay, then you can kind of read the body language and go, yeah, they're not. And I found myself, my mom was a very egotistical, very brilliant woman. I mean, and I learned that, okay, when you have something to say and you have the answer to it, you should share it and get it out there. But what that does, and that painted me, not as a helpful person, but it actually, true story, it painted me as a very egotistical, sarcastic know-it-all. And I had to change how I was. This was back when I was trying to become a supervisor. I had to change the fact that not just because I want to help you and I want to give you the answers, that in turn can make you feel worthless and feel like, oh, I'm an idiot. Oh, here comes Chris, Mr. Answers. And I really had to back off and say, hey, would you like some advice or would you like my opinion on that? No, I got it. Okay, great. You know where I'm at when you need it. And it's definitely been a balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, the more we can own our presence and be present in the moment and truly just appreciate being present to everything, then I think that creates the space for that authentic self-expression. I think that, when you're truly present, you're more attentive, you're listening, you're engaged, you're coming from your heart space. You're not up here, thinking how you can show up or show out, right? You're thinking of just being connected to the moment and grounded in who you are in that moment. So, that's, I think, a real key piece to truly being authentic as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree. Good stuff.
Yay! Christopher, I'm dying for you to take one of them guitars off your wall and start jamming for us.
They're not in tune. Maybe on a future hangout we'll go ahead and I'll play Every Rose Has a Thorn or something like that, and we'll do some singing or something. Who knows? But it's interesting. What's interesting, just a side note to all this, I haven't thought much about authenticity and what we're going to talk about. And yesterday I put on Facebook, who do you think celebrities and politicians are? What do you think are some of the authentic people out there? And what was interesting is quite a few people were like, I don't know. And some people chimed in, like they said, Johnny Depp, they consider him authentic. Who were a couple others? But it really wasn't that many. And when you think about that, it's such a cool thing when you, like Jim Carrey, you think about Jim Carrey, I think of him as being an authentic person. And just because somebody's authentic doesn't mean you have to agree with them or disagree with them. You just have to respect the fact that they have the what to say, okay, here I am.
Hey, Carrie Ballsack.
Huh? You were edited by the PMRC.
The big brass monkey balls.
Yeah. You saw me naked, right?
I was just filling in the dubbing, the bleep for you.
But what do you guys? Who are some of your heroes that make you inspired just to be who you are, just to be there in the moment, like you're saying, Audra, is perfect, because we spend too much time being in the past or in the future and not being in the moment, myself included. But who are some of your guys' inspirations? Doesn't necessarily have to be a celebrity, but who inspires you that you feel is an authentic person?
My greatest was my grandmother that passed away. My grand banana, actually, she was my grand banana. That's how eccentric she was, but totally free. Matter of fact, she was the greatest teacher in that she's passed away several years ago now. But growing up, I was so embarrassed by her. I'm like, she is a freak, right? She would say goofy things. She's so much I'm so kind of her now, But like she was just like she had no like she would just say whatever, and she was funny, and she just like she didn't care. But some of the things she did, people would be like, oh my God, you're so embarrassing, or whatever. But she was just free. And so I really didn't appreciate her until I grew up, because she didn't fit that mold. She totally didn't fit the mold of how you're supposed to operate and be and act and whatever. But everybody loved her. Like, everybody had a story to tell about her. Like that's her legacy she left, was that everybody, when she passed away, like, we all got sat around and everybody had a funny story to tell about her. And had she, tried to fit in that box, we would have been all deprived of that. So for me, it was truly, when I think of that true authentic expression with like no holds barred, not to be ugly, not to be whatever, but she just was like whatever bubbled up for her and whatever she, was living in that moment, what she was true to. And so.
Grand banana.
Grand banana.
Nice.
See, grandpère means grandfather in French, and she thought, well, if he's going to be a fruit, then so am I. So
that's cool.
Very happy. She named all of her children happy names. She had 8 kids, and they were all like funny, fun names. So
you had 8 kids?
My mom's the oldest of 8, and all of them in their name have a happy name. Like, my mom is Sunny, and there's Sunny, Gay, Glee, Hope, Faith, Mary, Merri, Joy, and then my Uncle Jeff. But they were going to name me Jester. So, so anyway, I guess the vibe lives on in
That's
me
cool.
somewhere. So.
Oh, neat.
How about you, Carol? Who comes to mind for you?
Well, it's funny because Abraham Lincoln.
Did you know him?
No, I didn't know him, but I just feel so. I had such an affinity for him. When I went to the World's Fair in New York in 1964, and I went to the Lincoln Monument, I was just taken aback by it all. I felt I had such an experience that I don't know whether I knew him or not, but everything that he said, everything that he stood for, had touched me so deeply. And I don't know, Abraham Lincoln. Weird.
That's too funny, Carol. I just took, those little Facebook quizzes that come across or whatever. There was one I just took the other day, and it was, which president are you? And I got Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
So that must mean you like me.
That's right.
What's funny about Abraham Lincoln, since we're talking about Lincoln, is when I was going through the process of wanting to become a supervisor, it didn't dawn on me to go back and learn about the history. I mean, I dropped out of school in the 7th grade, so me and history really suck. Ask my wife. I'm forever saying, okay, so what year did the Second World War happen, or what happened here? And I asked somebody some advice. I said, who would you think is a great leader? And somebody said Abraham Lincoln. I'm like, well, that guy was like, I don't know, way back when. And they said, go read one of his autobiographies. And I read his autobiography and found out that as a leader, he was in the trenches with the troops, and he didn't ask his troops to do anything he wouldn't want to do, and that he was, I can't remember the word, but he was very genuine in saying that he wasn't perfect, and he couldn't do everything right. And I saw the movie that was recently done. I can't remember the Benito or whoever the guy that played Lincoln was amazing, but I respected him so much for just being that authentic guy. It was like, hey, I'm going to get in the trenches with you. I'm not above you. Just because I'm your leader, doesn't mean I'm infallible. So I agree with you guys. But for me, when I think about authenticity, and it's really funny how it just popped into my head because I didn't know I was going to ask you that question. John Cronin was the founder of my day job, Patty. And John Cronin, it was one of my second or third corporate jobs, and most CEOs, stereotypically will come out in front of the audience and their workers, their teams, and be like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're the best darn scuba diving company in the world, and you guys, golly gee whiz, are awesome. And John Cronin would come out and say, you're the best goddamn customer service team in the industry, and you guys have it. I want you guys to own it. And he just spoke from the heart, and he just, superlatives and everything. He was just a genuine guy. He cared about knowing your name and walking through the building and saying, "Hey, Christopher, how you doing?" and knowing stuff like that. Just a genuine guy. He didn't care about the politics of the corporation. Didn't care about artistically saying stuff. Held you accountable, without saying, "Well, gee, golly, was he?" Did get right to the point and say what's going on, so you knew. That's why I tell people I love getting feedback, even if it's going to hurt my feelings, because if you tell me today something that's going to hurt my feelings, as opposed to saying, "No, Chris, everything's cool," but 6 months now something happens and you go, "Well, I kind of thought that." I have way more respect for people who just say it like it is. So John Cronin, for me, authentic guy, has taught me that in my leadership. And another guy, George Carlin, the comedian, because George didn't put anything on. When you see his stand-up, and he is a comedian, but the things he says are so true. And what I love about this, and people have said this about me, they're like, "You say the things I'm thinking in my brain." And I have so many people tell me, like, "Chris, you just say what I'm thinking, and you have the balls to say it, and I don't." And George Carlin, for me, that's why people say, the whole one part Tony Robbins, one part George Carlin, all mixed up at an AC/DC concert, is because of that. Things are so easy and so simple, and I love the way he would just say it like it is and say, "Okay, here's what it is." So for me, those are the two people that I can think of at the moment that I inspire to be like.
Something that you said can bring you back down to true authenticity too, and that's like when somebody hurts our feelings, right, or we get triggered, or those things come up for us. Beautiful opportunity for us to check in with our authenticity, because it's like, what part of that, stung for me, right? And usually it's like you not owning one part of yourself, because true authenticity is what owning all, like Carol said earlier, right? It's owning all of those parts of us. It's like, what part am I not owning for myself, and what do I, what does that mean, and what does that look like? So I love that came up for me when you shared that. It's like that our triggers are really gifts, for us to check in with us and say, how am I showing up, and is it true to who I really am? Because if it was, and we were in that power, whatever that person said wouldn't sting for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true. Triggers are a great way. We used to, in this group that I'm a member of, or have been a member of, what we used to do was on our assignment during the week, was to notice the triggers while they were happening, and just note them and notice them. Because in the act of just noticing a trigger, it kind of dissipates. It kind of loses its charge. And then we would have to write about it to everybody in the group. I was charged by this, and what was evoked by that trigger. So we spent a lot of time on this with regards to really getting into the nature of triggers, what is really being triggered deep down, what's behind the trigger, and accepting that it's there. Because which is one of the subject matters that I want to go into in another hangout that we have, is acceptance. So, but when we go to that place and can really begin to look at the trigger, look at the threat of the trigger, where it's coming from, and the root of it. When we can get to the root of it, it can really, it's like a domino effect. It can really knock down a whole line of dominoes for us.
Mm-hmm.
You said a key word. Oh, sorry, Christopher.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you said a key word in our topic today on authenticity, and that's acceptance, because I think that's one of the key components to being truly authentic is having that level of acceptance for yourself, acceptance for other people, because you can show up from that heart-centered space of wholeness. And Christopher, what were you going to say? Because I didn't mean to snag the microphone.
No, we're enthusiastic and we're passionate about what we're talking about. Carol, when you were talking about triggers, one thing I wanted to say, because I already said something about I love about Audra, is, Carol, about you, is when I had my event last year, the Kick-Ass seminar and everything, stereotypically, I would not imagine you, I guess, aligning yourself with me, bandana badass guy, I'm saying stereotypically, but you owned it and you were there at the event and you've embraced, Audra and I think that's so awesome because I think, number one, it says that you're comfortable in your own skin, being who you are, and not being judged. Like, okay, don't hang around. I'm in meditation and in spirituality, and I don't want to hang around this guy who's a nut job who might say anything at any moment that might fall out of his mouth. So, I mean, I respect you for that. And I think that's so awesome because when you talk about triggers, it hit me. The trigger that we're in the moment when we're not being authentic is I'm not enough, and a fear of that, and I go back to that judgment place. If we're having an interesting conversation, because we've all talked about this before, that we're not necessarily always going to agree on stuff, and that's the cool thing about life, is that you have an opinion, and having that, I go back to confidence, that you can share that opinion and feel good about it, and say, I did this thing. It's part of my eulogy that I will have fought for what was right and what was fair. I will have risked for which that mattered, and I will have left the earth a better place for who I was and what I did. And when I keep that in the back of my mind, and I think about some of the conversations that we have, and sometimes things can get, political, or they can get dicey, if you're talking about politics or abortion. Or recently, I started bringing up the subject of medical marijuana, and before, I would have kept quiet about that stuff. And now I've become comfortable and confident being able to say something without becoming a jackass. But I think it's funny when you talk about triggers, Carol. For me, if I start feeling little and small, then I stop it and go, no, Chris, you're human. You can have an opinion. You can participate in the conversation. You could bring up something that's not going to be well agreed upon. And I've had that happen a lot in the professional world, at corporate, where it was like, okay, just shut up and make the boss happy, and and tried to do that, but being miserable inside. So when you hit trigger, that reminded me that that's when we start feeling small a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
What do you guys think, since we're here to obviously help people also, what do you guys think is some of the ways that people who may be watching this right now are kind of going, yeah, I keep my mouth shut a lot, and yeah, I try to do things to make people happy. What do you guys think that we can do, or that there's steps that people can take to start feeling that confidence and start changing that conditioning and that programming that has told them, okay, make sure you don't, disagree with people, and make sure you're always liked? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I would ask them, well, what prevents? Like, what part of you holds back? And because the answer is really there. Like, I hold back because I'm afraid of what? I'm afraid they won't listen to what I have to say. I'm afraid they will judge me for what I have to say. I'm afraid they're going to reject what I have to say, right? All of those things, And sometimes they might not know, like, immediately. Like, for me, I held back. That's why I created the Just Say So project about speaking and owning your truth, because I would find myself holding back a lot. Like, I would want to share. There would be a room full of people and everybody's engaging and sharing, and I would want to, like, share everything. Something would bubble up for me and I would want to share and express, and then I would hold back. And I was like, why do I do that? And I didn't really know. And it was like through coaching, and that's why what we do is so powerful, you guys, is it's because there are those unconscious things, and sometimes we don't know why we do what we do. But, through the coaching process and all that, you can peel back those layers and really uncover it. And for me, like, I had this breakthrough, not even that long ago, where it was like I still had found myself holding back, and it was that I had this unconscious thing playing in my head that was basically like, and I don't know where it came from, but it was like, shut the fuck up. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Like, that was what was playing in my head every time I would bubble up and want to, like, share. It was that voice, like, shut the fuck up. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. And so I would shut the fuck up because nobody wanted to hear what I had to say, right? And I didn't even know that I had that critic in my head, that advisor, like, running, my whole world. And so, after you have that, and you get that pattern break and shift around it, like, no, that was huge for me. After identifying that and scratching that record, like, now I'm like, that's not true. That's just a lie that I was fed so far back that I didn't even remember that it was there, and now to be able to let that go and say, people do want to hear, you find all the evidence to prove why they do want to hear what you have to say,
Yeah.
can you reinforce from that? So I know that was a really long, answer from my side, but I would say really just giving yourself the gift to check in with your triggers, your emotions, that's part of it. Maybe you're not being triggered, but if you find yourself holding your tongue, I mean, bite your tongue. It could be those beliefs too that were passed down. Bite your tongue, mind your P's and Q's, whatever. A good friend of ours, Walt actually had shared with me on his radio show when he interviewed me on his radio show that day, and I shared the story about me being gonged in the 4th grade. And he was, and how, it kept me from wanting to stand out and express myself in that way. He overcame, speaking too, and he said that there was a time when he was in, I forgot what grade it was, but he was talking in class and they put tape over his mouth. And he, was like, oh my gosh, and stuff like that, like he learned as a child that, keep your mouth shut, right? Like, you're not, shame on you, you're bad, what you did was wrong by expressing yourself, so I'm going to tape your mouth closed. So can you see where maybe that would jack up somebody, in the future from communicating? So like we talked about the very beginning of this hangout was that, what your question was, Christopher, is that, where do you think that symptom, it really does go sometimes so far back that in our unconscious that we don't even remember moments like that. Mm-hmm. So he didn't even remember that moment. We forget these things, but they still play out. So there's power in all of these processes. There's power in your spiritual mentorship, Carol. There's power in your kick-ass shit, Christopher, because not everybody's going to, we all need somebody that fits our vibe equals our tribe.
Mm-hmm. So. Absolutely. Great answer.
I think one of the things that first has to happen is that there's a recognition that there's a holding back of some kind. That's a leap in and of itself. When we begin to create this space where we can start to look at our behaviors and want to create a change. I'm not going to say that we make a change, but we are open to change, to the question of what is that? What's the nature of that? And want to delve into the question of what keeps me from being more of who I am, whatever that looks like. Why am I shy? Why do I blurt out things that have no meaning and no relevance to the conversation? Some people feel that's people's need to be seen and heard. But when they start being seen and heard for real, then it gets scary. So that it's a double-edged sword of wanting to be seen and heard and being afraid of being seen and heard.
Yeah. That's very true. And what's funny that triggered me to ask that is I do a lot of research on stuff like this, and there's an article, you guys might have seen it on Facebook. It was like the top 5 regrets that a hospice nurse learned from their patients. And I've known this for a while. I knew the top one, and it's amazing that it solidified that for me, and it helps me guide my life. And the fact was that he said the top regret is that people lived the life. They didn't live the life they wanted to live. They lived the life that they thought they were supposed to live based on what their parents or their religion or society, told them that they had to be. But on their deathbed, they're like, I wish I would have been a fireman. I wish I would have told people I was gay. I wish I would have told people that I hated Christianity. I wish I had told it, instead of living in this quiet desperation. And it's so amazing when you think about that, because there's the world's so huge. There's somebody for all of us. There's groups and there's tribes like you guys were talking about. And I've learned that for myself, because I know that we're all dying. And it's interesting because I watched a documentary about people going through hospice the other night, and we're all dying, and we don't cognitively think about it, but would you want to wake up tomorrow and know that you spent the last, however many years you've been alive being something that you're not, and trying to fit in with people that you don't even care about? It's funny. I used to fit in with people and be somebody that I wasn't, so they could like a person that I wasn't. It's like, okay, they like me for being somebody who I'm not, and it's so ridiculous when you think about that. And I know that a couple of years ago, my pendulum swang towards, okay, I probably shouldn't wear the earrings. I probably shouldn't have the wallet chain. And I would sit in meetings and I wouldn't openly disagree with stuff. I'd be like, okay, well, they've already made their decision. And I would sit there and I'd feel miserable. I'd feel just terrible inside. And then recently, I've been the one, and they know this about me. Our management team's huge. There's like 40 of us. And I'll be the one guy that'll say, can I ask a question? And I used to come off very sarcastically. I'm like, just so I understand, why would we do this, X, Y, Z, if we haven't even talked to the person that wants this? And I look around the room and people are like, boy, I'm glad he asked that question. Because they're afraid of, okay, well, the boss doesn't want to hear that. Well, if the boss doesn't want to hear the truth, maybe they doesn't want to hear it because it's going to hurt his feelings, but he's going to have a respect for you if you stand up and you say, hey, I care about this company, and let's just answer this question. And I just know when I do that, I just feel so much better. And the one thing I know you guys believe this, when we feel good and we're happy with who we are, that manifests itself in our health. And I've seen so many miserable people just get sick and all these other things, and they go get this medication which causes these other problems. And when we can just live truly from our core, that's my passion in life. That's my 2 cents of that coin.
And you said it's what you speaking up and speaking your truth gives you self-respect. The other person respects you from speaking your truth, but you respect you for that level of self-respect for honoring your truth. And that's it. Owning it. So.
Yeah, it's a win for authenticity.
Go authenticity! Woo!
No, really. I mean, you think about it. In every single moment that we're stepping into our own beingness and our own truth, that's stepping into our authenticity and owning it and taking a stand for it. And the more we do that, the more confidence we build for ourselves, and we show others, we're an example for others to do the same. So it's not, the work that we do is not just for ourselves, obviously, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here. It's for others as well. The more we show up, the more able and the permission people feel for themselves to show up as well.
Yep.
Especially in a corporate environment like that, because I've been there. I know how it feels to not be wanting to say something but really needing to. I worked for in a company where a lot of people looked to me for answers before they looked to my manager, and while that made me feel uncomfortable at first, I owned it. I had the answers. I knew what to say. I knew what to do. And if they were coming to me, I had a responsibility to answer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's very true. It's just ultimately, because I know we're running down on time. For me, I found out when you find out what your why is, your why in this world, and you, like for me, when I wrote my eulogy, it really, back in 2008, it really identified the fact that the things I was focusing on were really not what my legacy was about. And when I found out that I wanted to fight for what was right and what was fair, and just really affect people and touch people with my story and the 25 years of personal development, all of that, to find out what your why is, to be able to say, okay, if I pass away tomorrow, will I have any regrets? I have 2 goals in life: stay out of a hospital and have no regrets. And part of that is just being the best me that I can be, and being and honoring that, in a spiritual sense, in a God sense, whatever it is that we all believe in, that, the closer we are to who our soul is, then the happier we're going to be in life, and the more people we're going to touch. And it's just, we got to put down that, okay, what are they going to think, or what are these people are going to think? And I've seen people in miserable marriages and miserable families and miserable jobs, and I tell them, what's the worst that's going to happen if you just be you? Oh, they won't like me. Well, then they're not your people. Larry Broughton, somebody we know. It's like, Chris, they're not your people. Go find your people. Simple.
Right?
Yeah.
For me, it was like, okay, what's more important? They like you or you like you? Like, I didn't like me when I wasn't being me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like me when I wasn't being me. I kind of like me more when I get to be me, and I get to just show that. So it's just really making that decision, truly. And I think, my last take on the whole authenticity piece for today would be, for it's not something you acquire. It's not something like you were saying, you know, have to go and research how to be, you know, I think it's great. I think that if you go and you're looking at how to be more authentic, you know that you're not being authentic. So what does true authenticity mean? And exploring that, like the topic of this show. And but it's not about becoming anything. It's about revealing the truth of who you really are and owning it wholeheartedly. You know, all sides of the coin of yourself. You know.
Yep.
So.
Yep. There's a something that you just said that reminded me of the fact that, you know, the more honest we are with ourselves, the happier we're going to be. And authenticity goes very, very deep. It speaks to our own character and how we present ourselves in the world, and being aware of that all the time. And I'm not saying that we have to. I'm not saying that we have to pretend. Authenticity is not pretending. It's not pretending. It's not putting on airs. It's really going deeper and taking a look at what does authenticity mean to me. Only me, not anybody else.
Exactly. Good point, truly. And you know what? And here's another piece of that, and another topic for another hangout. It's vulnerability. I think when you can own your vulnerability, that's true authenticity. When you can let your feelings, show up and be vulnerable and revealing transparently who, this is me, and that is extreme authenticity in my book.
And you can get a lot of people to embrace you. I mean, there's a person we all know that has given me advice saying I put too much of my personal stuff out on Facebook and let people know what I'm going through. But when I do that, I get so much feedback and so much, oh God, if he's the motivational speaker and he's the coach and he's all that and he's human, he has down days and down weeks. Oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. And it's so amazing how you can just build your tribe and get amazing people in your life when you just let them see the crust of a mother effer. I can't remember which comedian said that, but let them see the crust. The good, the bad, the indifferent, and we're all in this journey together. We don't have the answers, but I tell people, just be the best you can be.
I think that's a good note to end on. Just do the best you can. That's all anybody can ask for, and that's all that you can ask of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yay! This was fun! I'm so excited to be on this journey and to be the third side of the coin with you. Awesome peeps and friends.
What makes you think you're not the second side?
I don't know. I like the number 3, I guess. I don't know.
So if I'm number 2, then I'm in between you two.
Well, don't you like to be the sandwich?
Yeah, It is 2 girls, 1 guy.
I love it.
Okay, that would be, we could really take that and run with it, but we will just take this and just run. How about that? So.
Sounds good. Hope you enjoyed us today, and we look forward to seeing you guys in another 2 weeks. And thanks again, you two. I really love you both a lot.
Love you guys. See you
next time. Rock on, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.